Well, episode 20 is what we're on already. Took us a year and a half.
A little bit. No.
When did we start?
I think you and Dylan did some in...
Was it during the hunting season of 2022?
I think it was like November. And then I think we did... You and I did one. I think it was like end of December, early January, something like that.
But here we are.
Here we are.
Episode 20. Now, we were talking about having a discussion about shooting bucks, shooting deer. And
how often we should do that in a certain amount of time.
Yeah. And not only that, but when it comes to shooting big bucks, I believe there's a rule that, the majority of the time you should shoot the oldest bucks in the neighborhood. That's kind of what it's about. And I understand people that I had someone comment this morning. I didn't even tell you this, but they commented. We get lots of comments, of course. I try to answer them all, but I can't. I only answer about 10,000 a year, YouTube tells me. So I missed probably another 20, I would say at least. But they made a comment that, don't forget it's not all about antlers. It's, about just going out and enjoying hunting. And I agree. But what I don't like are participation trophies. And what I mean by that is we're going to teach our kids and we're going to teach people on this channel how to be the best they can be at something.
Right. That's why we're here.
So I don't want to teach someone just to shoot does because that's easy. Shooting does, young bucks on public land, a good seasoned hunter can accomplish that. Taking that next level where you're saying these are the oldest bucks in the neighborhood, I want to target specifically those every single year, takes a different set of rules and steps. It's not about just going out and participating in hunting and enjoying the sport. It's actually attacking it and saying, I'm going into this with a set of strategies that's going to help me do my best and be the best hunter I can be. Because you don't have to be the best hunter to consistently shoot does and young bucks.
No, but to consistently shoot the mature bucks on the property, you should be doing that about 80% of the time over a 10-year period.
And that's what I like to say.
Right.
Shoot about 80% of the time. And
how have you been able to do that? Because you've hunted different properties. So Minnesota property, was this season 4?
Yeah,
so this was season 4. And every year you've been here, you've shot a mature buck.
Yeah, and we try to shoot the older bucks, the oldest bucks. And to me, it's all relative. It doesn't matter if you're hunting and your oldest buck is a 3-year-old in the neighborhood. I can't stand when people say, well, I got to shoot a mature buck. And mature is 4.5. That's when their skeletal size gets to that size, 4.5, where they're actually truly mature. Where a doe matures at about 2.5. So a little bit different with a quote mature doe versus a mature buck. Imagine that mature buck that has a year and a half more experience, and that truly makes them mature. But not everybody has that luxury of having 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old bucks in the neighborhood. Next year we've built up to, this year in 4 years, we've built up to where we saw 7 bucks that should be 5 years old or older next year, and that's not counting Isaac and Shorty, which we don't know what either happened to either of them.
Right, and when we went after these deer, we were specifically going after either this buck is going to be here or this one is here based on what we're seeing on trail cameras.
Right.
So we truly went out and attacked those deer. We weren't going to sit somewhere else, to let's see what's going to just come moseying on through.
Right.
It was all strategic.
Well, in our 5-year-old bucks, there's someone else's 2-year-old buck, 3-year-old buck. It's all relative, meaning that you're still trying to do your best to put yourself in the position. I'd rather see people shoot deer. So if literally all they're saying is they buy new property, I'm thinking of the UP of Michigan where I bought that big property up there, and we saw 1 spike for the entire season. Well, I hunted a lot of public land around there, but bottom line is on the property we got pictures of 1 spike. We had 1 rub, 1 scrape in that first year, and I wouldn't have blamed someone for shooting that spike. Because if they're actually working on the habitat and doing a good job, they're going to attract more and more and more. And in this article right here, is April or March of 2004, but that article right there, I talked about the 5 8 points we had in 2003. So even going from 1 spike and next to nothing to 5 8 points, that doesn't even count the spikes and 2 points or 3 points, 4 points that we had.
Well, and to piggyback off that, that first year that you hunted and that was all you saw, you truly attacked all of that property that next year to make it better.
Right. Yeah.
And that's part of what, that's part of what we do. That's part of what you teach people.
So I'd rather see someone shoot a 1.5-year-old buck, and if that was the best they had, or a 2.5-year-old buck, I want to see him shoot, because you can't be a quote buck killer and be a good hunter without actually killing stuff. Mm-hmm. You really have to. It's bee season, because when the moment of truth arrives and you haven't shot a buck in 5 years and you go to draw back, your failure rate's going to be really high.
Sure.
On that big old buck that you've been waiting for. And I can't stand when people say, well, I'm waiting for a 4-year-old. They've never seen a 3-year-old. And I see that all the time. Lower your expectations, kill something, but have it be in that upper age class of maybe not. Last year I shot the second target buck on my list in Wisconsin. You got a chance, or almost chance, very close at the number 1 target buck. And so we planned out our sits together, and it was pretty cool that we were almost able to take 1 and 2 on that property. And interestingly, the neighbor that has 400 to 500 acres there, those were their number 1 and 2 too. And we got really close to taking out both. And
Really
we've
close.
taken out the older bucks on that property several times. The number 1 buck or 2 buck.
Has there been a year you haven't been successful over on that Wisconsin property since we've been leasing that same one?
Oh boy, I started leasing it in 2014, and I'd like to think that, not like to think, but I think I had 1 year where I didn't shoot something,
And which is odd.
or maybe it was just a bow buck. But I don't remember. I know in those years, that's 10 years of hunting, I think I've killed at least 15 bucks right around there. But the point is that if you follow the principles of good deer management, you're going to shoot bucks 80% of the time. Over 10 years, you shoot your oldest bucks. And partly that is because most neighbors are not. They're not hunting carefully. I mean, we see that sometimes around here. I don't know what you saw on your previous piece.
People around there didn't hunt carefully at all. There was a big name, company name in town that owned property next to ours, and they were not careful hunters at all.
What were they not careful about?
They were driving
because you see the same consistency.
Yeah, they were driving
over.
through the main heart of their all their property with ATVs,
which we love.
Right, which is great.
Well, no, we love it on our neighbor's property. We love that because so many people, just about ATVs, so many people think that doesn't matter. And my first response is, how many times have you driven by and watched a mature buck at 30, 40 yards, like does and young bucks, just watch you go by, and no big deal, and they just go back to their merry way, and it doesn't happen.
No, and their access was poor too, which was beneficial for us.
Yeah.
So when you don't have careful hunters, it benefits you. Even around here, we see people that have fully electric machines, but when we're riding our quiet cats out there, and they're relatively quiet, and we stop and we're walking, and we're like, what in the world is that noise?
Yeah.
These side-by-sides creak.
Oh yeah.
Pretty loud, and you're just
the suspension.
The suspension,
the
everything.
frame, the cab, everything. It makes noise
and
squeaks. And I was and I've told this before, but I was in a blind this year. It was towards muzzleloader, sometime around in there, and of course they didn't have snow. And I hear this thing coming across the fields, and it went by about 150, 200 yards.
Were the lights on?
No.
See, when I saw it, it was morning, and the lights were on, and they're coming up through the draw, and you're just like, oh boy.
I'm trying to think of where that one was. Yeah, but this was coming across the flat by the hermit plot.
Oh, sure.
And but it made a lot of noise to the point where I'm wondering, what is that? What it reminded me of? And it wasn't, but it reminded me of a golf cart with golf clubs in it. You know how they go by on the golf course, and that's what it reminded me of. So, and it would have spooked deer within 300, 400 yards.
For sure.
Guaranteed. I was watching the food plot over here, and I was just getting my stuff together, but had there been deer on there, them going by at 150, 200 yards would have cleared that food plot.
Absolutely.
And if you think otherwise, I hope you're my neighbor.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, really, that's access, ATVs, really critical. But let's back up a little bit because you want to shoot these older bucks. We're going to talk about the principles that, especially on private land, but I want to back up and talk about public land because we got to go on public land. I have a hard time deciding which my favorite is. We could try to discuss that a little bit, but I like hunting public land, and you and I got to go out to Pennsylvania along with Dylan and hunt public land this year. Going into it, that we want to shoot an older buck, and it's kind of hard to do when you're showing up and you don't know what bucks are out there. You have no trail cameras. You don't even know where the sign is at until the lights come on opening day.
Right, and for me, it was pretty unique. It was the first time I had ever hunted public land ever, anywhere, and so I got to do it in PA, which was great. I've always been fortunate enough to have a family that has property that I can hunt or have my own. And being the jobs I held before, I never really had time to go out and do the whole public land thing.
Yeah, and it's and for me, my first properties I could hunt on were public land, or I had some permission on small parcels, 10 acres, from some really nice elderly people at church. And then we wandered around from there. We were kids, 16 and 14. Getting dropped off by Dad and said, okay, just go hunt and figure it out on your own, because he didn't know how to hunt. We grew up in a fishing family.
Sure.
Hunted Pontiac Lake Recreation Area in Lower Michigan, Holly Recreation Area. If I was hunting back then and I wanted to go, a lot of times it was on public land because then I could go anywhere I wanted. We hunted a lot of rabbit hunting.
But did you see a lot of
squirrel.
people on those public land, those parcels that you were hunting?
We saw a few, but not that many.
Okay.
And you know what's interesting? People talk about there's a lot of people that park at the same spots, hunting the same spots as everyone else. What I find on public land, of course, access is critical on private land, but it's just as critical on public land. And if you're going with everyone else, and you're attacking the quote great spots on public land, and you're ignoring these hidden honey holes that might not look as good on paper, but they're better because no one's hunting them.
Sure. And maybe this is a good leeway into the why public land is so much easier to hunt than private land.
Yeah, it's so different. I'll ask you, we went out to Pennsylvania. We went out public land hunting. Here, we've often talked about that literally we could hire someone to work 20 hours. See what you think about this. So let's say they're going to work about 1,000 hours throughout the entire year. We could probably employ them to do all the stuff we have and keep them busy on our own property here. And if they're a little short, we could send them over to Wisconsin. But we might fill their 1,000 hours a year just right here on the property.
Yeah, I'd say.
A lot of work. But it's not a lot of work. It's not just that work. It's you have to do it correctly. Because if we're doing work incorrectly, we're saying, well, this is a cool spot for a native grass field, and we'll plant some switchgrass. And this is a great place for a water hole because there's drainage here. This is a great place for, quote, timber management to make a bedding area because it has this type of timber. But we ignore how we can get on and off the property without spooking deer, and the entire hunting strategy of the parcel and that entire foundation, we just destroyed the land, no matter how work. So there's a lot of work that takes place on private lands incorrectly, and it's a waste of time, it's a waste of effort. And what I think one of the strategies is just throw darts at a map, 100 darts at a dartboard, see what sticks, and over time remove the ones that don't score well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 20, 25 years down the road. It takes decades. This isn't something you can do overnight. I'll figure it out. No, you can't. You need that experience to go into it of actually hunting and shooting. And so when we talk about public land being easier, we know it goes into here. We know that one mistake can X out. Let's say we have 3 areas of our property. We'll call it the northeast, middle, and southwest.
Okay.
If we mess up once in each of those areas, we're done.
Yeah, and if I'm hunting over here and screw up, and you're hunting over there and screw up, we're in big trouble.
Yeah, we got one spot to both screw up together.
Right.
But that's usually people's first 3 weekends of hunting.
Yeah.
They just screw it all up in the first weekend, and
then they're not seeing any deer, and then they're wondering
especially
what's
the mature
wrong.
bucks. It goes back. Maybe you'll see the does and fawns and young bucks, but to actually build a herd, So you know what goes into our private land.
Yeah, a lot.
So what was hard? What was hard about hunting Pennsylvania public land? Because there were some hardships.
Yeah, there was. I mean, the walk in and out, I don't want to say was hard, but
It was difficult.
it was difficult in some areas. But I would say that was probably the hardest part. The other part was maybe
How far did you say we walked?
we walked a little over 12 miles in 2 days with a 900 foot of elevation change each day.
How much habitat work did we do?
None. Well, I take that back. I think I broke a limb.
Oh no, you're not supposed to break a limb on federal land. You're gonna get in big trouble. I'm kidding.
Oh, wait, what?
It was a dead branch anyway, so it didn't count. But no habitat work, no money spent,
We didn't.
no hours and hours and days and weeks of work.
Right.
You just show up and hunt.
Or we looked at the topo maps. You had been there before. You had spent time scouting out there before, which was helpful. But before you had only been out there a day before.
Yeah, that was my scouting. Was the day before. There were some summers that I was able to get out and scout like a couple hours here, once or twice.
And the reason you were there wasn't to primarily go and scout the land. It
No,
was
it's
you
for
had family
vacation.
there.
Yeah,
Right.
family vacation. So
So that was a little different.
It was. Yeah, and so that was hard. All the walking we did.
Yeah. So by the time we got to where we were going, or we knew where at least I was going to sit, it was kind of like looking around and figuring out what your greatest, point of watching was going to be, where they're coming,
Right.
where we believe that they're going to be coming out of these draws, where they're bedding, where they're eating, and where they're going to be the corridor in which they're going to be passing through.
Wait, and that the interesting part about that is we go do that. So let's say we had a monster buck come up to us while we're talking and looking around and whispering, and he sees us and runs away, and he runs to the south, which was back towards the trail system where we came from. So let's say he runs to the south. For one, we probably saw him run through 400 yards, and he didn't stop for another half mile after that, and he was going south. So what would we have done the next day if there was this giant that ran to the south that we spooked?
Go hunt over there.
So we hunt basically 2,000 acres over and hunt that location, hoping for a big buck. That's one of the big differences too.
Yeah, we're here on the private land. We screw up those two spots. I screw up this one. You screw up the one, the south, the south property or the south portion
we
of our
can't
property.
go anywhere else.
We ain't going nowhere.
No.
You know?
And that's one of the big differences. And I would argue that on public land, there's a lot of public land locations that are actually that have a better deer herd as far as buck balance with in does, populations maintain and balance of the habitat, and then also decent age structure. And I'll point out where I used to hunt in Ohio. 65,000 acres of public land, and I think I saw 2 other hunters in 7 years.
But is that normal?
Dozens of times out.
Is that normal? In every single place you go, is it normal?
It is, because that's how I hunt.
Sure.
So I'm not going to go in an area that there's a road a half mile apart, and there's great parking areas, no water, no hills, no beaver dams to cross into. Because even when I hunt in the UP, I've never seen anybody else out there. Never.
So
So Jake, we just went there, Jake and I, was it 2 years ago? For opening day.
I think so.
2 seasons ago.
That was brutal.
And we saw 0 other hunters, and that was normal in that spot. I've shot 148-inch 8-point there out on public land, federal land, and that was the 3rd, 4th day of the season, middle of the day.
Well, and I think that too ties us back into that first point of that comment that guy made, where it's not all about antlers, but look at what you're doing on private land.
It's only about antlers if you want to hunt the older bucks and you want to be a better hunter.
Sure, but what I'm saying
Not
is,
everyone wants to be a good hunter.
But look at what you're doing on private land. You're going to a place that you don't think anybody else is going to go, that anyone else is going to take the time to go, and you're going to go there to avoid everybody else.
Yes. I'd rather have my own playground.
Right, to try to hunt a mature animal for
Yeah.
that place wherever you're hunting.
There ain't no participation trophies.
No,
in our
with you.
household.
No, and there
there's-
never will
If
be.
Jackson, and I know the answer to this, if he sucks at t-ball and baseball, he's going to do something else.
Yeah.
There's no sense bringing him to baseball and doing all these things. Motocross, you would win in motocross, so you kept going. You had dreams of being a supercross rider. I mean, you wanted to be a pro.
Right, just keep riding until you get to the top.
Yeah. Yeah, where you kept winning. But if you were last all the time when you're 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Yeah, but you just sucked at
That's
it.
participation trophy stuff.
Yeah, you don't want to do it
You know,
anymore.
then you just go out. Maybe you have a nice track on your own property, and you go out and just ride because you enjoy riding. Maybe
There's nothing
look at
wrong
all
with
the
that.
thousands of miles in the upper Midwest that you can go to, all over the country and
No.
ride dirt bike
Yeah.
and just go have a good time. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But we're talking about people that actually want to do their best in hunting, and which is a big difference. And on public land, to me, it's the same structure of tips and tactics and strategies on public land as there are on private land. And I'll ask you, I'll put you on the spot. If we're hunting public land, what were some of the keys to our success that you think when we went out there and I shot my buck the second day?
Access. We knew where to go in and go out. That was going to be
And access meaning not only we're not going to spook deer, where we can come in from the side, but how we can get in easy.
yeah,
'Cause it was
exactly.
900-foot change elevation.
Yeah, so we had to go up this rather steep hill, and then when we got to the top, it was really it was almost like a saddle up there. So you could definitely see that there was a drop in elevation on both sides, but we could walk through there and not spook anything on either side. So
Right.
if there was something bedding there,
That's
and,
kind of hiding ourselves.
and where your buck came from was exactly the place where we were.
It was a
walking
place
through.
where we met and separated
Yeah, bye.
in the morning.
Yeah, so that was important. You made a good shot. You made 3 good shots.
I just keep shooting. If I got ammo, I'm shooting. So I think I shot 2 and reloaded.
Yeah, you did.
I did.
And
I
you didn't shoot the 4th one because Dylan was like, he's going down. He is going down.
Which I've shot when Dylan said that before. Muzzleloader.
Why that does not
He's going
surprise
down,
me.
he's going down.
Well,
Damn.
and here I am sitting 500-600 yards from you, and you are shooting in my direction.
Somewhat,
And,
yeah.
Well,
Big hill in between.
very big hill in between. There was no danger.
Yeah.
But when your gun went off the first time, it was very peaceful and quiet over there. I guarantee you I jumped. For a fact. Jumped, and then when the next 2 shots went off, I was like, well, I hope that thing's dead. And if it's not, I hope it's running in my direction so somebody with a good shot can actually kill it.
Yeah. Well, and that was, one of the things when I go out in the public land, the first thing I'm looking for is big food and food sources. Now, where I hunted in Ohio, that would be fresh clear cuts, not more than 3 to 4 years old, because once they get too old, for one, the deer can't move through them. They're full of briars, multiflora rows. But 2, the browse starts to get out of reach. And so in those first 2 to 3 years, it's almost like a cornfield, the deer, out in those public land areas, clear cuts. Now, we were hunting Pennsylvania, there's no cutting. It's called a wilderness area along the reservoir. So it's a national forest designated wilderness area, so they don't cut. They can't cut. That timber is, over 100 years old.
Massive.
So what you're looking for there is the sunny side, where you have a lot more browse because the sunlight gets through and gets more browse, more growth on the forest floor. Also, then there's mass crop, and up top there's mass crop of oak, beech, and cherry, which will drop down. And I've seen where they're hitting the beech really good, depending on the year. Not as often as the acorns. Acorns are pretty good this year. We were slipping on them going uphill.
Yeah, we sure were.
But when we get down the bottoms in that area, there's a lot of hemlock. And the deer are not feeding in the hemlock unless they get really massive snowstorms. They get pushed into there. The hemlock branches get pushed off, broke off. Some of the smaller trees will get broken. I've seen that happen, blowdowns, and then they'll eat that hemlock. And so then they have the best of both worlds. They have that thermal cover, snow hindrance cover because it's filtering down through the boughs. It's not as deep under the hemlocks. So they can move around, avoid predators, and then they have some food. So they have cover, food, thermal cover, food, and then they have easy movement. So I'm trying to identify that on public land and then find a good way in and out so that we could take advantage of that. And especially, it was crazy. Did you hear the boats?
No, I couldn't hear him where I was I was sitting.
Where Dylan and I were at, we're open more towards the reservoir. You were around the corner, around that hill. And we could hear boats coming in, and they're a couple miles, 3 miles away. And then we knew people because we could hear them on the road. Mm. Could you hear that?
I could hear that.
Yeah, and they'd slow down, and you hear them stop.
Yep.
But they were a mile and a half, 2 miles away, straight as crow flies.
Long ways away.
So we got in between all those people, and that's another thing too. We weren't on the main trails. We used a main access parking area, but from there we do our own thing.
And even then, we never saw anybody walking in and out. I think that first day we were there, we saw some flashlights as we were getting ready to go, and that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was absolutely it.
And again, we talked about this, I think, in the last podcast. It still is crazy to me that guy, that buck I shot the second day, that we got a email with a video of my buck making a scrape in September, October, somewhere.
The odds of that are very poor.
Very
poor.
That was pretty cool. So we have those founding principles that we're looking for. Identify the major food sources, which for us was that hard mass up on top in the flats, away from the hemlocks because it was good weather. It was cold out, but it wasn't snowy in any way. We had good access in, away from other hunters, so we could get ourselves into a position where we're in the middle of other hunters, we're taking advantage of food movements, bedding benches off to the side, big movement areas where people could push deer to us. And when you flip over to private land, I tell people, people say, well, I'm in Texas, Alabama, and these concepts, or not concepts, but these tips don't help me. The concepts are all the same. My Whitetail by Design, my first book, the Red Book, intro conclusion, I talk about a big buck hunt. And I talk about the buck coming, and in the conclusion, I talk about all these factors and concepts that I wanted to coin and talk about in the book. And this is 2012. That I thought were my concepts. I wanted to define them. I wanted to write about them and put them in that book, and I did. And what I found was that, people would look at that and say, well, it's about private lands. And that's what I wrote about that in the intro and the conclusion. That was a story of that big public land buck in 2011 and hunting that buck on public land. And the concepts are still the same. It doesn't matter if it's public or private land. Private land, there's a lot more work to get those concepts. You have a lot less room for error because you have 40 acres or 200 acres or 500 acres. You don't have tens of thousands of acre where you can just go move over there. So it's a lot. It's just different. It's just different. More boot time on public land sometimes, but even then you can scout from the air a lot. And in the case of gun hunting, you're putting yourself in ambush spots that go back and forth. And so, public land, my favorite, I really like Ohio. That was private land, or that was public land, big forest, but it was with bow, mostly. I hunted muzzleloader too. But I really like to get into a position where you had close shots, and so it was a little bit different because I'm looking for small little tiny saddles, benches that connect on little finger systems away from people. Same concepts, identifying food. I'm getting in between giant clear cuts, for example, and getting into those locations and letting those deer move between those almost like a giant barbell. And I'm hunting the funnel points away from people and good access in between. You flip over to private land. Same thing. When we came here, the first thing we do is identify where major food sources can go. That's determined by our access, meaning we can't access through them. And once we have those access points away from food, then you can develop the property from there. You can build bedding areas, doe bedding areas next to the food, buck bedding areas. If you develop that depth of cover back into that, and that establishes your whole framework of hunting, where you're hunting in the morning back on the backside of the movement, meaning if a buck is bedding 300 yards away from food, I'm hunting that spot in the morning. And then I'm flipping around and I'm hunting on the way to the food so I don't spook out the food in the afternoon. And then I'm adding water holes in between in those hunting locations, maybe some for morning, some for afternoon. But it's the same framework. You're still trying to get yourself in position. The different thing is in a private land neighborhood, it's almost like your other neighbors, and we have some good hunters around our neighborhood here, but you're trying to put yourself in position almost like you're hunting public land and waiting for those people to push deer to you.
And I think when you talk about concepts, every time you walk into the public land, you need to hunt it like it's private.
Well, yeah, you still identify those food sources.
Right, right. And you still have to use those same concepts. However, food plots are a little bit different. Obviously, you said it. You never want to spook deer off those food plots.
It's critical.
So if you do...
And we take great pains to do that.
We do. I mean, great pains to do that. you know, there's people out there that spook their deer off their food plots, or they're putting tree stands in. They have a food plot here. Let's look at Coon Valley. Look at our
Yeah.
food plots. We could never ever put a bow stand.
We never have bow hunted those in 10 years.
We can't.
No.
But you know, there's people out there that do.
And they would.
Right. And the question you should ask yourself is, can you get on and off that food plot without spooking deer? And if the answer is, I don't think so, or if the answer is no, don't put a stand there.
Well, that's an example. We've shot a lot of nice deer in Coon Valley. And we've hunted with a gun. We've hunted the food plots, muzzleloader primarily. But without those food plots, it would ruin our public land, or without those food plots, it ruin our bow hunting. Up top, all our rut hunting, our morning hunting, waiting for the deer to come back to us. They wouldn't be there because they want to focus on that food source. And that's where, again, with private land, you can never develop a good private land parcel with ignoring food. And if it's a moderately sized parcel, 80 acres or larger, 40 acres or larger, 30 acres, you have to have some kind of food source. Cover doesn't mean much, even if you're surrounded by ag, because what happens when that ag is plowed under? What happens when it's corn on one side, beans on the other, and it flips the following year? Then all of a sudden half your property is no good because they're hitting that other food source, and it's only good in the early part of the season, or it's good in the late part of the season because they still have standing corn one year and then they don't for the other 4 years.
And that's and that too, to piggyback off that too is part of the reason why in a majority of our food plots, when we're planting that brassica and those fall greens, it's half and half. For the reason, and when I say half and half, we're cutting it down the middle.
Right.
So it's not like on this big chunk over here is the brassica, and then this big,
On this food plot.
On this food plot, we're not just planting brassica, we're planting both.
It's the same combo all the way across, consistently across the property.
Right, because we don't want them to be over here and just like this and then ignore all of this.
Well, we have those three sections we talk about, northeast, middle, and southwest.
Yeah.
If we had all the corn in the northeast, when the deer want corn, they're
They're
all in the
gonna go there.
northeast. Then all the middle and southwest sucks. There's no reason for consistent movement because you
Right.
don't have food. And then if you go in and if you plant your food correctly, and then you go in there and spook it, now you just invited every deer in the neighborhood to your property, and then you just spook them off. Now you educated more deer in the neighborhood because of the food. So the
Right.
food is very, very powerful. It can kill you. It can hurt you. And so when you're looking and you want to shoot that consistent mature buck every single year, the oldest in the neighborhood, you have to be the property that's not spooking the deer off your food source. Right there, all your food sources. And right there, that'll set you in probably about a 10% mode or less in your neighborhood because the majority of people are spooking deer off their food plots. And so be that 5%, or we call it the 5% club. It could be the 3% club. Because most people, because when you add in, well, yeah, I don't spook them off the food plot, but I drive through the bedding area. I blow my scent into the bedding area. I blow my scent into the food plot. I don't hunt the food plot, but I have a 10-foot wall of screening, miscanthus grass, switchgrass, conifer, and I walk right along that. Well, 10 feet, 20 feet, 50 feet, usually, if it's a regular access going back and forth, the deer know you're walking by. They hear you. They hear your boot creak. They hear a noise. They don't like it. They don't like it, especially when it's not consistent all year long. It's one thing if they hear a distant house, they always hear that noise. But when that noise transfers to the woods next door, different story. When the farmer's tractor, they're used to that out in the fields. But that tractor drives into the woods to drop a hunter off. That tractor's not there. Not
No.
normally there. So on that private land, the same way you hunt that public land, you have to keep your food source secure, get in and out without spooking deer, put yourself in a position to enjoy deer being pushed to you from your neighbors, not enhancing that. You know, a lot of people, even with access, if your neighbor's accessing along their line, access along your line, right in the same spot. If your neighbor has a stand on the property line, don't move 50 or 100 yards into your property just because you don't want to mess with his hunt. You only have 40 acres. You just gave your neighbor 10 acres out of 40. Is he paying the taxes? Is he paying the mortgage? No. So walk right along your property line in that case. But bottom line is you have to adhere to those concepts of low impact hunting, and then you just chip away. You know, how often do we hunt with a bad wind?
Never.
But we talk about the 80% rule, and I want to hear that. I feel that I 80-90% of the time shoot the oldest buck in the neighborhood anywhere I hunt, public, private land, and I have done that for 30 years. So this year,
You killed my buck. Don't laugh. It's true. You killed my buck, which was your number 1 or 2. I think Barry was number. I don't know which one was number 1 versus 2 to you between Bo and Barry, or were they
kind of the one that walked by
first and
but
said hi, Jeff?
I couldn't really decide that. What about you?
I love big gates, so
I know, but between Bo and Barry, which one would you have rather shot?
Bo's unique. He's but then so is Barry.
Barry's got an 11-inch brow tine.
He sure right, which is really neat. They're
both 6.
I would have been happy with either one, so probably same thing, whichever one decided to, walk in front of me first.
Sure.
Would have died. You got an opportunity on them both, and you killed one, and you miffed the other.
That was sad.
It was sad.
Sad because we want him to. I don't want him to suffer during the wintertime too, and that was eating at me. Just I wanted to get him so bad, and part of it was I don't want coyotes to get him. And we haven't seen him now for another week. It's gone by, or 10 days, and so you wonder again.
Wonder if he's there.
Yeah,
but with
hope
that,
he's okay.
But with that, we don't need to go into detail. You weren't patient.
No, I wasn't. He came out. I probably could have waited another 20 seconds, half a minute, and
it would
have been a lot clearer.
But let's back up and talk about wind. So you're sitting in the redneck up on the 67.
Yeah.
You see him pop out. He goes right into the corn. You're not going to have a shot at him for where you're sitting because of that wind. You're not blowing it into the food. You're not blowing it into the bedding. It's being blown back out by our axis and back into that ag field, which gave you the opportunity to sneak out of that redneck, go down our switchgrass alley, we'll call it,
tunnel, yeah,
where you're not seeing anything.
That was about a 200-yard
sprint,
leaning over, running.
Yeah, sprint. And then you had left a turkey chair sitting where you had hunted on the edge.
Yeah.
And you hunkered down and you sat there and you waited for him to come out, and he did. He came out exactly
About an hour later.
But he had no idea that you were there. Your scent wasn't blowing back into where he was going. Anyways, and then he came out. He looked right at you. Well,
Still hunting like a predator. I just didn't pounce correctly.
No, you pounced.
I missed.
You missed. And then he looked back at you and said, "I'll see you next year." And then he just kept going. I hope. He's hurt. We don't need to go into that, but hopefully he. This winter has been really easy on him. It was 65 degrees the other day in February.
Yeah, crazy. We had a lot of mid-50s.
Yeah,
no snow, no deep snow for him to. And let's go back to I shot your buck.
Yeah, I had COVID.
So you did shoot a nice buck, nice 8-point, not the big 8-point, but it was the medium-sized one.
Yeah.
One that was a pretty nice one. Dylan and I were able to pass him up. I don't know if I saw him more than once, but bottom line is I was able to watch him and really enjoyed watching him. And I was going to watch Jackson, and it was my turn to watch Jax. And you and I both pushed that, and when you shot your 8-point, you were watching Jax. And so I hunted with Jax a couple times. I could have shot Junior the one night, which would have been really cool, but he's a beautiful 4-year-old. He was on the do not shoot list. And kind of going back to you can't shoot him at 5 if you don't pass him up at 4 sometimes, where he doesn't get a chance to get to 5. But I was going to stay home and watch Jackson.
Yeah, you were.
And I really, and it wasn't like I weaseled my way in.
No, you didn't, but it.
Especially because you gave me COVID. It wasn't even like I gave you COVID.
You weren't sick yet.
No, I'm just saying, that's what I mean. I didn't boy, this is a good time coming up here. I need to be really close to Jen so she gets COVID and I can go hunting. You got sick on your own. And then you got me sick.
I did.
And I still hunted, though.
You did. And for me, it's one of those.
Maybe I'm stupid.
I truly enjoy watching how excited you get every time you go hunting. So that's a part of it, too. And, we talk the whole time about strategy and where we're going to go. You take my opinion on, hey, I'm thinking about sitting here, where should I go? And with Bo, when you went out there, we talked about this last time, you sat in a stand, the wind wasn't ideal, so you got out of there, and then you went
It looked ideal on paper.
Yeah, it did, and then when you got there, it was not good, so then you moved and you went over to the apple plot.
And that's part of, when you hunt in hills, you can get a berming effect. And so The wind comes in at an angle. The angle should be good, but it hits the side of the ridge system, and just like water, if it hits that ridge and that berm, it turns in front of you. And so it kept turning. Every once in a while, I could tell. I blow bubbles out of my mouth, but I could see the bubbles all of a sudden start going to that way instead of this way. It's really confusing because I'd sit there and they'd go like this, and all of a sudden one would go that way.
So with bow, we've been talking about the concepts are all the same,
Yeah.
whether it's public or private. What was the point for you where you're like, this is exactly why I was able to shoot bow?
Knowing his patterns, all the sign that we get, scrapes, rubs in that area, getting an occasional picture of him here and there. We didn't get a lot of pictures of him, but you know he's in that area. He beds in that location. When he leaves that location, we know what direction he goes. He's eventually going to go through that small food plot, that water hole. We lined everything up. So out of that bedding area, we created it. Joel helped us with that this year. And then put the water hole in. And then we have the small food plot. We have a bigger food plot that's like an acre. And then we have a bigger one that's like a 2.5 acre. And those are all like over a 600-yard apart. But when they start rutting, they go from one to the other. And so I love sitting at what we call the apple plot, just a small little intimate look that they go by. And so then we had a cold front. That was October 27th, I believe. And that same cold front, as it went through, I was actually hunting because it was still kind of gray and dark, and that it was dropping that night. And but then I was able to hunt that cold front on the back side of it over in Coon Valley 2 days later and shoot a nice buck over there, that number 2. Mm-hmm. But the cold front, knowing where he should be that time of year, Dylan and I had passed him up the year before, which is kind of cool because when you watch these bucks, it doesn't matter if they're 2, you shoot them at 3, or if they're 5 and you watch them at 4 and 5, you get to know them. And that's why we like putting those trail cameras, moving them. You're just constantly trying to hone down exactly where they move. And then that is always verified by sign too. Rub and scrape, old scrapes, old rubs, and knowing it. So,
do you have a favorite between public and private?
You know, we hunt the private. It's kind of our game. We can work on it all year. What I like about public, honestly, is it's, to me, less stress. That makes sense?
It does. Would you say private land is more rewarding when you shoot a big deer?
I can't say that. It was pretty rewarding going out to Pennsylvania and shooting that one.
What's the difference? Like for you, what's the difference? What was the difference between shooting that deer in PA and then being able to shoot bow? Because there was emotions on both ends of it. I saw them both.
So on our own land, we had videos and pictures of bow for 4 years. Got to know him. We hung stands with him in mind, and you do that. I've done that with a lot of different bucks where you're looking at like, man, I hope Bo comes by this when we're working on it, and or Barry or whatever buck. And so that's a big part of it, plus all the sweat equity and just overall work that goes into it as a team. You know, Wes helps us sometimes. Dante's over here too. So we work a lot as a team. We talk about it. We shoot videos on it. So it's kind of like, the stuff works. And it works again. It's worked for the last 25, 30 years, and it works again. That's a satisfaction of these concepts work. Everything's dialed in. Public land, it's different because you're going in, you're spending little to no time scouting. You're going and getting set up, and you're shooting a nice buck in a location that other people haven't seen a buck like that in 20, 30 years. So it's a little bit different. It's a feeling of, man, you know, these concepts that I use on private land work out here too. And they do work. And so to all of a sudden have a nice buck fall in your lap and to actually be able to go out and look at him for the first time. You know, that buck that I shot with Dylan in Pennsylvania, Dylan's sitting behind me like 12 feet, and I shoot that deer, we see it fall. It's about 75 yards away. I think I sat down with Dylan for at least 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes before we even walked over to the buck. It was almost like walking over to the buck, can't wait to see it, but then the hunt's done, the work begins. It's kind of like we sat and enjoyed it. Dylan shared some of his coffee with me. I had an oatmeal pie, just sat there and reflected with Dylan. And it was really cool. It's different. It's just different. I can't, I can put into words what it was like going, with both of them. Like Bo, I couldn't wait to get to him. yeah, this is what he looks like. This is, but with the buck in Pennsylvania, it was almost like, okay, got one. And why it's so different on private land too? That's why we name the bucks. We don't have any names for them out on public land. I hear people say, "Oh, that's stupid to name deer." That's because they're not going after target bucks. They're not going after individual bucks. They don't know these bucks from 4 years, or else they name them, because the big 8 can only be used so many times. We talked about that last podcast. It's kind of ridiculous. The big 8, the big 10, the wide 8, the wide 10, the narrow 10, the heavy 10. I mean,
Yeah, we even
can
had
only
that
use
problem here, though. We've been calling that big 8 that we had. We've been calling him the big 8, and I think it was you who said we just got to name this deer.
Yeah.
And we did a few weeks ago. But so Ocho. So publicly and privately and bow, and then your PA buck that you got this year.
Well, the one in Wisconsin's a big 9.
Yeah, but
We didn't have a name for him.
But where I'm going next is going to be similar. With Bo, we were able to drive the side by side right to him.
Yeah.
With your big 9 in Wisconsin, you and Dante just drug him down the hill. Pickup truck was right there.
Yeah.
Threw him in the back, and we were done.
Pennsylvania.
But Pennsylvania.
So what do you think of packing out deer?
If you're by yourself, I don't know how the story that you tell about doing it by yourself and not packing out your first one, but dragging out your first one. I don't know how anyone could ever drag.
Well, you saw like where I shot that one.
Yeah.
I told you to get up to that point from the backside where I was hunting. It took 2 hours to drag them up one step at a time.
Right. And you're dragging the whole deer.
And then to go across that flat where we walked in, the exact location, it was an hour. And then to go back downhill all the way to the truck, it was 2 hours. So 5 hours.
I just don't think that's smart. So the way that we did it.
Well, I was 24 years old then.
You had a purpose. You needed to show people this buck.
Yeah, I was 24, but at the same time, I had never been exposed to frame packing or packing out deer.
And you met a guy when you were...
That was 93.
When you were first out there.
I was 23 years old.
Yeah, and this older gentleman basically said, "You got to get yourself one of these, Sonny."
Yeah.
And rest is history.
He's walking in with a long john shirt on and just regular pants, hunting pants, and then he had all his coat and stuff in his frame pack, and then when he shoots his deer, he wears that stuff out or slashes it to his pack and carries the deer out.
So that's kind of what we did with yours.
Yeah, what'd you think of that?
I thought it was interesting. I'd never done that before. The deer we didn't even gut the deer.
No.
You basically removed all
Pretty easy, wasn't it?
It wasn't something that was hard. Put everything in garbage bags.
Yeah.
Put it in the pack, and then between you and Dylan and I, your pack was probably the heaviest, and Dylan and I's were probably about the same.
But I am the strongest.
But you were carrying, huh?
I am the strongest.
I don't think so. You want to do an arm wrestling contest right now?
They gave the heaviest pack to the weakest person. Let's put it that way.
I just about was ready to say he's lying, but no. But anyway, it was pretty heavy. Your pack was heavy. Dylan had to help you put it on. You weren't putting it on by yourself.
Yeah, it wasn't terribly heavy, but it was probably 65, 70 pounds.
But that's a big difference when you're hunting public versus private too. We have so many trail systems here that getting side by side pretty much anywhere.
That's one of the reasons we clear all our trail systems out.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we can get a deer out of there now.
Yep, no.
Yeah, we'll put a culvert down there so we can go get that deer if it drops from those 3 stands.
Yeah, right. It's like we've done this, and a lot of other people have done it enough where you're just like, I don't want to drag that deer any more than I have to.
Yeah.
Look at Dante's deer from 2 years ago. Remember when him and Dylan had to drag that up? I mean,
now we have a road within 10 yards of there.
Right. So
on the downhill side.
Yep. Just
I think we could have rolled it into the back of the side by side.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So there's
our new side by side, the new Ranger. We have a winch on the back.
We sure do. So Jeff and I don't have to. I'm sorry. So I don't have to pick up this deer and throw it in the. Last year, 45. I don't even think you helped me put that thing in the bed.
Someone had to stand in the bed and pull it up.
Yeah, but you were pulling. I was doing all the heavy lifting.
And we both said after that what did we say? If that thing was 10 pounds more.
I think if it was 5 pounds more, I don't know if it was.
Yeah, we would have gotten help or something.
By the time I got in the back of the side by side, you were both like, whew.
Yeah.
Well, we figured it out.
Yeah.
But there's a couple, that's a big difference between public and private.
Yeah.
But it was still.
But the hunting concepts are still the same.
Hunting concepts are the same.
Yeah.
Getting the deer out of the woods in either scenario was still memorable and fun and you wouldn't want to change it.
Well, talk about even just access. The camp I was a part of, they had up to 17 guys. I think they averaged 12, 13 people a year. All the stats going back, average $5.50 a year for the first 40 years. And so we're tons of history. I was there when they shot their 200th buck in year 37, 36, somewhere around there. But what we found is that when they put the antler restrictions in and the buck age structure started getting older, then us Michigan boys going out there, I think it was 12 years. I had my name 7 out of 12 years, and Joe Lasek had it 4 or 5 out of 12 years, and we shared some of those years together for shooting the biggest buck. And it was just that we didn't hunt the way they hunted. They walked a lot. And now we go out like Craig Schilling. He's still shooting big bucks, and he sent me some messages this year. He was one of the ones that hunted different. But for the guys that were used to just walking around all day, they would end up shooting those younger bucks. And it kind of goes back into the same thought. It's kind of like if you're going to drive your ATV into the woods on private land, if you're going to hunt your food sources, you can shoot those younger bucks and you can shoot those still, especially if you create good habitat. But if you want to hold the older bucks and shoot the older bucks consistently, you have to hunt different. And that's where, like Craig out in Pennsylvania, he hunts differently than the rest of them. I think Stu, that was out there at the time, he hunted different. Stanley, those guys, they hunted. They were the 3 cousins. They hunted differently than a lot of the people out there, and that rewarded them with bigger bucks. I remember Steve shot a big buck one year, and Dustin was Steve's son. I just remember all these names now, but I hunted out there for a long time. But to shoot those older bucks on public land, you had to hunt differently, and you had to hunt like you did on private land. Only private land is different because those little teeny mistakes are magnified greatly, and you don't have enough acres to absorb those mistakes.
So being that the concepts are the same, public versus private, when you go into public, you need to hunt it like it's private. Same concepts.
And then private, you build it like you need to hunt it.
Right. Where do people fail? Specifically on, let's start with public land. How do people fail when they go in?
I think there's something that could be said for hunting sign that's near the road, and so sometimes that works. Especially, I'm thinking bow. Maybe if a lot of people are out of the woods and it's gun, it's later in January muzzleloader. There's opportunities. A lot of people do the same thing. A lot of people walk, which still hunting can be great. We've shot some nice bucks still hunting throughout the hills in Pennsylvania during snowstorms and areas where you're quiet. It was really super windy. You could, especially snow on the ground, you could move about, not spook deer. They couldn't hear you looking over the ridge coming in because it wasn't crunchy. We were out, it was crunchy the whole time. It was a terrible time to still hunt, but people still hunt. And they'll still hunt in the wrong conditions. They won't still hunt in the right conditions. So if we're sitting down like we were, I think in 2018, I went out and hunted, and I sat, and it was supposed to snow, and I sat in a hemlock bottom in a flat that I've enjoyed hunting. I've shot a few bucks down there. It just rained the whole time. And so the rain wasn't enough to push those deer down there. They were actually all up top still. We found tons of sign. We got up there that happened to be like a half inch of snow because there's that much in elevation change. So there's snow up top. There was rain down the bottom. But bottom line is there was sign up there we just missed. And so hunting in snow areas where you should be hunting in open areas or non-snow areas, going in with the masses, using the traditional, not cutting off, not getting into your own spots, not recognizing the lay of the land and how deer actually move through the area and getting to those remote locations where people might push to you. But basically hunting like everyone else and not becoming part of the woods, but being an obtrusive guest. And so everything knows when you step on your foot on the leaves for the first time, everything in the woods knows you're coming. And that's where people fail on private land.
What about public? Or I'm sorry, what about private land?
Well, and that's where, again, it's a lot smaller, but from what I see, most of the time where people are failing is they overhunt or hunt in general. I mean, you have to have food plots typically that you never hunt unless it's with a gun and you're hunting. People hunt with a gun and they put it in the shack right on the side of the food plot. That's just just very counterintuitive. To sit 50 yards back, make some holes so you can get in and out. I always ask people, can you get in and out of that blind without spooking deer on the food plot? You have 15 deer out there. Can you get in and out without spooking deer? If the answer is no, move the blind. Shorten the food plot. Get rid of the food plot. Change your access. Do something, because it is that black and white. When can I go in and just go all in and hunt that stand in the middle of my property that looks really good and I see lots of bucks? Well, you see lots of deer in there because it's in the middle of your property, and that's also why you don't see much the second time, third time, fourth time. If you do see a deer, it's 3 weeks later, they happen to come through again. That doesn't mean that you should be sitting there. It just means you're hunting in the middle of the property. And they'll say, well, when should I hunt it? Say, where can you blow your wind safely while you're on stand, where you don't expect any deer? How can you get there without spooking any deer? Well, I can get in the morning. Well, how do you get out in the afternoon? What about the evening? Where do you blow your scent when you're on the stand? If the answer is you can't keep from blowing your scent towards deer, you can't hunt there. It's not to say you can ever say never, but you should be set up. Your best form of scent control is stand location. So between accessing and spooking deer, hunting food plots and spooking deer, and then spooking deer while you're walking to and from your stands, bedding areas, making too much noise, hunting with ATVs, those will blow any of your chances from shooting deer consistently. And just because you're in a good area and you shoot a big buck every 4 or 5 years does not make you a good hunter. You get a participation trophy because you're in a good area and you happen to shoot one every 4 or 5 years. I want to see the person that shoots them every single season, the oldest bucks in the neighborhood, at least 80-90% of the time. That's a good hunter. And so, again, kind of going back to, you can't eat the horns. We're not just horn hunters. Hey, I want my kid to have a decent batting average if he's playing baseball. I don't want him to bat 100 and sit on the bench and he can't pitch because he can't throw hard. There's other things he can do in life that maybe he could excel at. And I don't think it's very good for our kids when you give them skills or fail to give them skills that help them excel at anything they do. So if they want to hunt, teach them how to be a good hunter. If they want to play baseball, teach them how to be a good baseball. And if they can't get it, teach them something else, because they don't fail at something for 5 years before you think, you know what, maybe they should have been a football player or a soccer player, or maybe basketball's their thing, maybe band's their thing, maybe riding dirt bikes their thing, maybe fishing's their thing. Let them do that. It doesn't mean they need to go fishing and be in a tournament. But to me, saying, well, we don't need to focus on the horns is almost like saying, let's just go fishing. We really don't care if we ever catch fish we can eat. We just like being on the water. We saw a school of fish go by one time. We caught some small bluegill. We almost caught a bass that hit the limit. That's great if that's what you enjoy doing, but some of us like to catch fish and actually eat them and actually succeed when we go fishing. And that to me is no different than, actually going out and wanting to do your best at hunting. Mm-hmm. And if you just want to go out and hunt, follow the tactics that we have and then apply them, and just when a big buck goes by, shoot the doe that's behind it.
Right.
You don't have to shoot the antlers.
No.
But put yourself in a position, because mature buck is the lowest hole in the bucket. What that means is if you can hunt those, then every other deer is a piece of cake.
Exactly.
When I hear people say they can't shoot does in their property, what do you think of that?
You got big problems.
There's big problems.
Like, what are you doing?
Well, there's probably, and I see, even on public land, I see that, because you could have shot in a place you'd never hunted on Pennsylvania. When did your first does go by in opening morning?
Very early.
Yeah.
Very early.
11 o'clock, 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah.
So bottom line is that there are people that can't, it's all about experience. And so a new hunter, if they hunt like they're going to shoot mature bucks, then they're going to have venison to last a lifetime. Doesn't matter what they shoot, the hunting becomes easy. If your private land, if it's hard to shoot a doe, you got big problems, like Jen said.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah. Yeah, and it would boil down to you're probably spooking deer off food plots, you're probably accessing poorly. You probably have set yourself up for, you have to walk through bedding areas, you have to walk through food sources to get to other points. You overhunt stands, you hunt stands with bad wind.
Right.
one of the things you can that determines a quality private land layout is, do you have morning and afternoon stands? If you can't answer that question, you got some work to do, and that's why we have this channel, to help people with that. I was going to ask you a mailbag question. Are you prepared for that? Jen's got mail.
I'm always prepared with my mailbag.
Are you?
Yeah.
I think, do you think we should, move on? I'm pretty sure. I don't even know how long we're at here, but let's move on to Jen's got mail, and we could do that.
'Tis the season for shed hunting.
Yeah.
So there's been some people asking about questions about that.
Yeah, a lot of questions on shed hunting.
Yeah. A lot of other questions about your clothing that you wear
clothing.
during podcasts. We should maybe address that too, along with maybe Jen's got jokes. Maybe we should talk about your clothes first.
What do you mean? I am sitting in my own home. I'm behind a table right here.
Okay.
Does this really matter?
I think
let's hear it. Look at. Does that matter? Look at that. I got slippers on. I got nice shorts on.
Slippers, shorts, and
they don't even know if you're wearing pants. Okay.
But I am. I think sometimes when people look at you, they probably are just like, they look at you almost like a news anchor or one of those meteorologists where they're like, is he wearing pants today?
Sometimes not.
Well, I'm telling Jeff, like, what should I wear today? Like, what shirt should I wear? And so he's telling me that he wasn't sure what he was going to wear, something like one of his First Light t-shirts.
You're like, I want to wear my Camso sweatshirt,
right.
So that's...
I think it's nice.
Yeah.
So he's telling me I'm going to wear something First Light. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then he comes and he's wearing one of his dress-ish shirts and he's wearing shorts and then he puts his slippers on and I'm like, my gosh.
But I'm like Clark Kent. Look at that First Light logo.
Everything about you is Clark Kent.
Yeah.
Anyway, so going forward, when people watch your videos, they should maybe that's what they should start commenting
I got a
on.
lacrosse hat.
Which is nice. I
Lacrosse
like
boots.
that hat.
Yeah.
I think people are going to start wondering if you're actually wearing pants or not. But anyways, there's been some people asking questions about shed antler hunting.
Sure.
And when is a good time to go on your property? When is a good time not? I know
It was interesting. I saw Chad Garteski from Weiss Realty. Did you see his...
Yeah, did you see the one side missing?
And what did he say? He said something like, is it...
When should you go? When is it too early to go look for the other side?
Yeah, or
something.
when do you look for the other half? Or,
Yeah. So when's a good time?
So I look at percentages. We're fortunate we have quite a few cell cameras out in the woods, a few dozen, and so we can get a very good look. For example, yesterday morning, or what's today? It's the 10th,
Yeah.
February 10th. Yeah, I should know that date. But
It's Jeff's birthday tomorrow.
Yeah, so
Happy
I should know it's the 10th.
birthday.
Thank you.
Birthday on Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah.
The greatest birthday present would have been if the Lions got in.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Sorry to bring that up, honey.
That would have been awesome. But anyways,
I'm Honolulu Blue.
I wanted them to get to the Super Bowl, and that's the expectations next year and beyond for a few years. But to get to the NFC Championship was really special as a Lions fan. I really got to wonder if I was going to see that in my lifetime. So
You made it.
It's pretty awesome.
Made
But yeah, I look at a percentage, and this can change greatly because in the UP of Michigan, we'd watch the migration trails coming through, and that would be between Christmas and New Year's. And at that time, over half the bucks would have already dropped at least one side or both. And so they dropped then because of nutritional stress, environmental stress. It's not just the photo period where deer lose it like the leaves are turning. It's not just that. There's a stress. And John Azoga, deer research biologist, he told me about the deer they had in a 1 mile enclosure up there, how they were pellet-fed deer. And so supplementally fed, they had all the nutrition they needed to survive the toughest of winter. And that area is actually the Shingleton, the Petrograde Deer Yard. And they still average about, that was right across the street from where Joey lives, where Joey grew up.
Yep.
Autumn's fiance, my daughter's fiance. But they average about 225 inches of snow per year, ton of snow. And the deer on the outside would drop end of December, early January, sometime around there pretty consistently. The deer on the inside of the enclosure would actually hold their antlers sometimes into March. And so huge difference, two months difference because of just the feed. Everything else is the same. Same weather, same photo period, everything. But those areas, big woods areas, where they don't have the complement of good ag fields, food plots. Food plots make a big difference, especially that food right before they go into the winter, going in with a full belly. Big difference when deer are stressed, and you'll even see that around our area. Our area, I would say that 70% are still holding. What do you think?
I would agree with that.
Well over half.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that.
But a week ago, I would have said 90, 85.
Well, and some of the bucks that we're seeing that have already shed their antlers are ones that they're hurt.
Well, yeah, we had Barry that was limping
Yeah.
around. Junior we haven't seen for a while, and I suspect it's because he lost him and he's limping. And
Yeah.
I've been getting videos lately because I want to see if the
I
buck's
know,
limping.
me too.
Just to see even Isaac or
Yeah.
Shorty if he's back.
So with that, if 70% are still holding, is it a good time for us to go in the woods next week, or is it a better time for us to go in the woods at the end of
Well,
February?
let me back up on that timing for a second, only to say that you can have an area here, but let's say we're in southeast Minnesota, so let's say you go further west. Let's say you get into a big wooded section that doesn't have the complement of that ag.
Yep.
They don't have a lot of food plots. Those deer might be at, 70% have dropped
Sure.
already because they don't have that same nutrition and habitat diversity to add and take away that stress. For we still had bucks fighting yesterday on February 10th in the morning. They look like a 3-year-old, 2-year-old, 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 2-year-old,
Yeah.
something
You
like
put that video out on Instagram with a bunch of those
did.
turkeys.
Yeah,
so
turkeys too.
If you want some reference, hit Jeff's Instagram and check that out. It's
Or
pretty
John's.
neat.
So, but yeah, so I'm looking at it like we know antlers have dropped in a certain spot. We have areas we could go into, and I'm thinking like Leo's plot. Where are we going to push deer there to? The rest of our property.
Right.
So if we went in and looked around Leo's looking for berry sheds, I don't think we're going to really do much damage. If we're rocking around in the Beaver, over behind Gold Rush, down into the valley towards the Cairn, if we're walking around the point right now around Redneck Corner, I just think it's kind of invasive.
Yeah.
There's a lot of deer bedding those areas. There are areas we can drive by and not spook them out on the ag fields because they're so far in and tipped down. There are areas I would feel comfortable going in and looking around a little bit right now. But generally, when we start hitting shed hunting and just not care, I want to see those deer down to only 20-30% are still holding. And even then, if we have Ocho and he's still holding in 2 weeks and he's around the Gold Rush, the Badger,
We're
and the
not
Beaver,
walking there.
yeah, someone asked why. I don't remember who it was or where I saw it. I didn't ever answer the question. Someone asked why we called it the Badger.
Oh.
And it was
that story. So
was
Dante. It was Dante.
it was 3 gun seasons ago.
Was it? Yeah.
3 gun season open days ago.
Yeah, opening day, so Dante gets out there.
2021.
And it was a stand he had never been to before.
But he knew how to get
But
to
he
it.
knew how to get there. So of course, it's dark. So he walks in there and ties his gun on, goes up the stand, so much as gets up there, gets his gun pulled up, and he looks down because he sees something by the ladder, and so he shines his flashlight on it, and it's a badger. And so Dante sends a group text, and he goes,
To Mike and Jen.
"Do we have badgers around here?" And I think before we could answer it, the second text message came through, and it was, "And do they climb trees?"
Yeah.
Which is just so funny.
He was actually...
He was a little
nervous.
scared. Yeah, he was a little scared. So
Which is fine. They do have a reputation.
So that's where we call that the Badger plot.
Anyways, yeah, that was funny. And so that's where the name the Badger plot came in.
Hilarious.
Leo's plot, he's a good friend. He won the hunt raffle and a good friend of Mike's. And
That was 3 years ago now.
yeah, it was. Wow. Yeah, and
It was
so
one of
Leo,
Mike's firemen.
yeah, Leo missed Lucky. And so we call it Leo's plot from there because we had fun hunting with Leo and
Yeah.
wish he would have shot it. We felt sick for him because he felt sick, and I know he does to this day. But yeah, we have those areas where I think we can get in and out. We have certain bucks that we don't want to spook. And really, it doesn't matter. We know these bucks made it. We're going to go turkey hunting pretty soon anyways. Pretty soon meaning mid-April.
Which is exciting.
Baby comes early April, so we'll have a little time in there.
Do you want to tell them the name? You didn't tell them last time.
Oh, yeah, we could do that. We're naming our little girl Lily. Lillian, and then we're going to call her Lily. So when I talk to Lily, most mornings or evenings, sometimes twice a day, I call her Lily.
Jackson calls her Yee Yee.
Yee, yeah.
Yee Yee.
But it was crazy because, just real quick, Jackson knew his name. And so Jen...
And he knew your voice.
Knew my voice. I think he knew his name, too. And even the nurse said, oh, he already knows, because he's crying. Jen's crying. I have my hand on both of them. He's on the warming table thing. And I'm saying, it's okay, Jackson. It's okay. And you just quiet right down. And so... and then it wasn't just then, it was several more times in that same situation, and then for the next few months, let alone at the hospital. We could be in the middle of the night, and I'd just say, it's okay, Jackson, it's okay, and he'd go back to sleep, or he'd stop crying. And so I want to do that with Lily, and so that's where I talk to Lily probably more. What I don't do with Lily, I haven't done yet, but with Jackson, I said first word daddy, first word daddy, first word daddy, first word daddy. I did that.
Second word mommy.
Yeah. I don't think I even snuck that in there.
It wasn't very often.
Yeah, maybe call that other person here mommy, but yeah.
Maybe.
But I haven't done that with Lily, though. But anyways, I look at it like when you're getting down 20, 30%, you think the bucks that you're after have already dropped. But even just if you don't have the luxury of these cameras out here right now, just looking at that same timing every year, for us, I would always say the end of February, early March would be that time frame. Now, if I knew something had dropped in early January and our normal timing is the end of February, early March, well, why not go out there in the end of January, look around?
And we did. We looked for Barry a little bit.
Yeah, we did.
before it snowed.
Right.
And
so that's another thing too. If you're a long ways away from the other 80% falling.
And we were. We came in from, the roadside. We didn't access through the middle of the property at all. So we did
So that's different.
Good job there.
That's like it's kind of a timing trip. But if they're not dropping till, say, and I could say around here, like right now it's February 10th, I would say we're going to be in that 50% range here within the next several days. And to the point where if we went out February 25th, 28th, somewhere around in there, you could probably say that 70-80% had dropped. And, somewhere around there. And then it seems like if they're holding still, I've seen them in early April, still holding.
I'm trying to remember the latest I've ever seen. I think it was end of March. I think middle to end of March, I think, is the latest I've seen personally. And
what sucked last year is all our snow. Yeah. So remember on your birthday, March 25th, your goal was to find some sheds.
Birthday sheds. That's all I wanted.
And what did we find?
We found Lucky.
Which was pretty awesome. Now, we didn't see him this year.
We didn't, I think.
Which is sad.
Very sad.
But we found his. He was a 5-year-old. And but even then on the north-facing slopes, we still had snow.
Yeah, we did. You're still walking through.
And that was like, we could shed hunt within a week of that. Otherwise, there was too deep of snow.
Yeah.
And then we got more snow early April. Our friend Tim was out here for the end of April. That's trout season, right?
Yeah.
And so we were driving, starting to get a little green, and we saw berries across the draw, and we were able to walk up to it, which is crazy. They're both sets just sitting right there. There's a bunch of white in the woods.
It just, yeah. Crazy to think about the snow last year versus right now.
And that was at a time where we're starting to gear up for turkey season, in April. And your turkey season, I don't think you probably know the dates, but what is it?
April 26th, 29th, somewhere in there.
Yeah, and then I hunt the next season.
Yep.
So you're going to have Lily early April.
Right, so then we'll be, Lily and I will go out and we'll go turkey hunting. We'll
have a girl hunt.
Nice
so Jackson, Jen shot a tom when Jackson was 3 weeks old. It was 37 degrees at the time. We'd been sitting out there for 3 hours. We just milked him up and went out there, and he stayed quiet the whole time and woke up after you, but not even after you shot. He woke up when we got him out of the pop-up, out of the blind.
Yeah.
Because I put my hand over his head. We had him nestled in a wool blanket. It was below 30 when we went out. Mm-hmm. It was beautiful.
It was like a perfect day.
Yeah, that was really awesome. But anyways, I would, I'd want to hunt when it's more in that 2/3 of drop, 3/4 have dropped, and they're coming off quickly, as opposed to more early, because you will spook those bucks off, and if you're waiting on older bucks, then they'll go away. So there's some people just like going all the time.
Sure.
And I know people that put on many miles, but they're hitting a lot of public land spots, a lot of private land where they have permission. They'll hit it this weekend. They'll wait 3 weeks, hit it again. No
I
one
did
else
that,
is.
but it was more so at the, I would say like mid-March-ish. You know, the landowners around us. I would just ask for permission if I could cross property lines from mine to theirs,
Yeah.
and it'd be nothing for me to walk 8 miles with Rebel
Right.
in a day.
Yeah.
You know.
And I would say I have a mailbag that we get consistently, and people will send us an email, and they'll get a hold of my email some way. They'll email you or Jesse. Jesse doesn't even forward them on to me, but it's can you help? And they'll have 3 paragraphs that describe their land and what would you do. Do you do any online consultation? I'd be happy to pay you for your time. The problem is we just can't help. And that's why I try to answer 10,000 questions on YouTube and other couple thousand on Instagram as much as I can. Those concepts really matter. So, for one, online consultations to me cheat the client, because we never can be accurate as if we were on the property. I believe we get 50% of the way there. And when people are dozing food plots, making radical changes on their land, that's just not good enough. And I know people are doing that, and I don't understand why they do it. I've done it in the past. And part of the problem is, to do a good job, the 2-hour phone call turns into 3. You have an hour of prep time, an hour of follow-up time. There's 5 hours. We're spending 10 hours with a client for a full day. A full day, my full day fee is $39.50 a day. So in order for me to charge for that 5 hours, I'd have to do a couple thousand. And because that's what it's going to be. So people are thinking, well, we'll do a phone consultation. It'll be a few $100. No, it's going to be a couple thousand, literally 2,000. That's what I would charge, $19.50, something like that. But then at the same time, people want to do it. I can't go on a client trip and do it like on my day off, because it's my day off. At the same time, I'm already turning away full day client days. And if I have to stick a 5-hour day right in the middle of it and I can't do anything else that day, why not take the full day and make $39.50? I already had to push my schedule aside. And a lot of times people want to do it in the evening after they get off work. I've done them on Sunday night when the family's waiting for me to go to dinner, and I said it was going to be a 2-hour call, and it turns into 3.5. So I have to end up doing it on my own time, and my own time, as you know, is very, very precious. And so, let alone to sit there and just throw out some recommendations for someone that sends over 3 paragraphs, it turns into a 7-hour email. I've even done that where someone say, can you just call me, and I'm going to have you come out to my land. I don't call anymore because I've had too many 2-hour phone conversations turn into nothing. It's just a waste of time. And too many people have taken advantage of that over the past, where we just don't do it. We can't. It's not accurate. We can't charge enough to make it worth it. And we're not like an attorney where we say, okay, we charge this amount per hour, and when we're just going to send you a bill. It's just not the way it works. And even if it was, you might not like our hourly fee, for what we normally make on a day. So the days are precious. Dylan and I, we shot
14.
We shot 25 in 2 days of filming. The last two Mondays we filmed. We film again this Monday for a third time. But we've shot, I think it was maybe 9, 10 shorts, 4 videos for partners, including Camso and Tacticam, and then we shot maybe 11 of our own, something like that.
And I think the last time you filmed, you said you shot 14, right? And that was the most you guys have ever shot in a day.
We shot 14 2 times ago, 11 this last time.
Oh,
so yeah,
sure.
But yeah, that was 14. Probably was in a day.
Yeah, Dylan does drone work too on those days too, and
he did.
It's a full day.
Yeah, it's a very full day. But the bottom line is the days are full, and so we can't. I try to just get out some comments, and to the point where things have places. That's why I always try to finish client drawings. Where I get in trouble, someone will say, can you make an adjustment on that drawing? Well, when I get home, I have no time to draw. I draw those with the client, I give that to them on that day. We fully discuss it, on average about an hour, hour and a half of discussion and notes, literally about 30 pages of notes, because I've had a client have that transcribed for him by his office manager, secretary, whatever it was, and it ended up 27 pages of notes for an hour and 15 minutes.
And interrupt you real quick, when people are asking you to redraw it, it's because hey, Jeff, that 20 acres across the road, I was just able to purchase it.
Yeah, or my brother said we could use that land, even though we talked about it. Can you redraw that? And I have a hard time saying no. And so what ends up happening is I say, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And then I have zero time on the client trip. I mean, last client trip, I got back to the hotel at 11:45 the one night, which is ridiculous. Another time was 9:45. I plan for about 9.5 to 10.5 hour day with a client. I can go 100 clients and not get done within 8 hours. Mm-hmm. But very rarely should it be 11 hours. And when you add on to an average of 3 hours driving per day for a client, it gets consuming. So that when I get back, I want to just stare at a menu and order food and kind of just talk on the phone to you and text the kids and follow up with friends. But I'm not doing deer work, because the next morning I'm waking up an hour early and putting a video out.
Right. To do deer work again. The point is, and then when you get home, after your client trips that you're on, there's a long honey-do list of stuff that we need to do on the property, stuff what we have to do for the business.
And then filming.
Yeah, so it's just...
we sat yesterday before we left and in the road making seed descriptions and new seed names for a couple of our Pure Wildlife blend seeds.
Yeah.
I mean, how many blends do we have? So 14 or 15?
Something like that.
Yeah.
I should know. And then this morning, we worked on that again this morning. You put your video out. I think we were doing that stuff until noon.
Yeah,
it's Saturday.
I put an Instagram reel out.
Yeah, it's Saturday.
And taking care of Jackson in between.
Yeah, and I don't know what time it is now, and we're shooting a podcast. Point is...
And and then we're leaving pretty soon.
Because Jeff's birthday tomorrow. I don't know if we mentioned
Birthday celebration.
Good dinner tonight.
Yeah, we like going to Johnny's Steakhouse in Eau Claire.
Yeah.
That's a place we really enjoy going.
Their food's good.
Yeah, and I like the atmosphere. You have to make reservations pretty far in advance usually. And then I stay at Holiday Inns when I go. It's not the nicest, it's not the worst, but they're everywhere.
It's not. That one's nice though.
Oh, that one's nice. It's a Holiday Inn. Yeah, it's nice. Well, I'm not saying Holiday Inns are bad. I'm just saying I'm saying what I like about the Holiday Inns is they're everywhere, and they're pretty consistent. So the bedding, the room decor.
I would say so.
I don't get. You're not going into one, and it's almost like you go into a different hotel with different decor, and it's kind of, where am I at? I wake up and it's just, I don't know. You don't sleep as well. It's different. I know what to expect. And so, anyways, that's where we're going up tonight.
For Jeff's birthday dinner. I don't know if we mentioned it's his birthday tomorrow, February 11th. Should we sing?
I'm not singing.
Why not?
Are you singing tonight, you're saying?
No, I'm saying like right now.
You can.
The 3 people that are watching this still, maybe they'll sing along.
Okay, that's good.
I didn't even...
Well, are you going to sing?
I was...
Okay, let's hear your voice. Crank it out, babe.
Happy birthday. That's about it.
Okay. I was just, the cake and popping out, I was just...
We have no strippers.
I wasn't saying that. You really brought this down. Sorry for the kids that are watching. We sometimes use these tools where you take the tape off boxes. We call them strippers. And so I don't know if that's what you're talking about, the box.
Right, yes, those. Stuff. Yeah, so, the strip the tape off and...
Yeah.
Anyways, that went down a rabbit hole real quick. How about the Jen's Got Jokes?
Yeah, let's just move along. Yeah.
Move along. I think I dug my own hole there. So the Jen's Got Jokes. This is a good one. I think it's funny. I think all my jokes are funny.
When we say it's a good one. Anyways.
Me and 3 other people think it's funny.
Oh, I did bring my mug this time.
I don't
know if you can read that.
Dad joke champion.
I'll put it right in the middle. Trying to make it easier for you.
Before we do the Jen's Got Jokes, there specifically was somebody who commented on hey, you should put timestamps on these things, mainly just so we can fast forward to Jen's joke.
I think they said fast forward through all the crap so we can get to Jen's jokes.
I mean, that's why these people are still listening.
Thank you for those comments. Jen loves them.
That may have been a joke in itself. Well, I do, because I'm just like, hey, people like my jokes.
Yeah.
They think they're funny. Anyways, why does a bicycle not stand up on its own?
I don't know.
It's too tired, Jeff.
Oh.
Get it? TWO, tired. Got 2 tires.
Here you go.
Thank you.
You get the mug.
Mom joke champion. They probably don't even make mugs like that.
No, I think it's still dad joke champion because typically moms don't make those jokes. So
I'm different.
you can
though.
be a mom and win the dad joke champion award. Does that make sense?
I mean,
It's dad joke champion. So you just make dad jokes. You know, that
so
doesn't
basically,
mean
I just killed the rest of the population in jokes.
no.
Yeah, I came in and I won
This
the
is
dad
really,
joke.
This is getting really confusing.
Is it?
So, bottom line, let's back up. You can shoot the oldest bucks in the neighborhood consistently.
You can
Very
concepts.
consistently. You just follow the concepts. It doesn't matter if you're on public, private land. Doesn't matter the age. Go for that top 20%, whatever that age is. Always just look to shoot those older bucks. You can always have a target. You don't wait. Someone said, well, I got some 2 or 3 year olds. We're going to not hunt the property for 5 years. What a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Get out there and hunt. Learn how to be an actual hunter and killer. And not in a bad sense. Just
Learn how to be a
meaning
predator.
Yeah, learn how to be a predator. That's a good way to put that. But we are signing off episode 20 in the books.